Hello friends, it's Jessica from Three Rivers Homestead coming to you from Northwest Ohio, where we started out the week with a little drizzle of snow and we ended the week covered in it with temperatures below zero with the wind chill. It is officially winter here in Northwest Ohio, and so I have been inside the house busily finishing up the last bit of my canning that I need to do to get the pantry fully stocked for the winter. It's the time of year where I need to start assessing and taking my inventory of everything that we have down here because we are soon going to be approaching the time of year that I do my pantry challenge. And if you're new to my channel, at the end of this video, I'm going to discuss that challenge and how I'm going to be completing it a little differently this year. But I will also put some resources in the video description to help explain what the Three Rivers Challenge is all about, how it started, and how you can participate. But it all begins with making a detailed inventory of everything that we have in storage because that will be the start of all of our meal plans that we'll be doing. And then in this video today, at the beginning of the video, I want to talk about some final canning projects that I've been doing to put the finishing touches on this inventory so I'm all ready as soon as the beginning of the year rolls around and I'm making those meal plans. And as I was in the cellar this week, I noticed that my white storage onions, these are Patterson onions, are doing great. They are holding up really well. But you'll see that my red onions that I have in storage are not doing as well. They are softening a little bit and beginning to sprout green. So I knew that it was time to grab these bags and bring them upstairs and do something with them. Now, I've always been under the impression that red onions sprout faster than white onions, and so I looked it up this week to be sure if I was correct, and they say that's actually a myth, that there isn't anything in red onions that makes them sprout faster, but for some reason, they never last as long for me in storage. This is a problem every year. I can get my white onions to last all the way until spring without sprouting or going soft, but for some reason, I always have troubles with these. But that is no problem because I love pickled red onions. And so whenever they start to go soft like this, that is always my plan for using these up. And it's the simplest canning project to do. All I do is chop my onions into these little slices, and then I like to put them in half-pint jars. I think it's the perfect size jar for onions. And then I add my pickling spices, and you're at liberty to use whatever you want. I am just putting about 1/8 of a teaspoon of, I did crushed red pepper, I did black peppercorns, mustard seed, I did garlic scape powder, I did regular salt, I'm trying to think, there's something else I did here. Oh yeah, crushed red pepper, did I mention that? But all of any pickling spices that you would want to put in them. And then I top them all off with some distilled white vinegar. I always make sure when I'm doing canning to use store-bought vinegar that is at 5% acidity so that I know that this is safe for water bath canning. I do make homemade vinegar for any other purpose in our house, but canning is the one reason that I will purchase vinegar. One of these days I'm going to invest in some pH strips that will give me really accurate acidity testing so that I don't have to buy vinegar anymore. But for now, we're using that distilled white vinegar, and then we're going to put our 4 jars canning lids on top of these jars. We'll get our rings on them, and then these go in the water bath for 10 minutes. If you've never had pickled red onions, they are such a delicious topping on a variety of meals. We, in particular, love them on our tacos. I'll also make a fresh-ish, it's not completely fresh, obviously, but it's an almost fresh salsa using these onions throughout the year whenever I get tomatoes from the store on sale or something in the winter. And I just love having these on the pantry shelves. Not only are they delicious, but they're so beautiful. Look at the color of these. I am so excited to have these beautiful jars on the pantry shelves and that I was able to use up those onions before they went bad. And the next project is one that I've been wanting to do for a while. I needed to clear out the freezer of the rest of the frozen cranberries that I had bought in bulk a few months ago. And if you are looking to do some cranberry projects, this is the time of year to do it. Typically after Thanksgiving, a lot of stores will put their cranberries on sale because it isn't really a popular product throughout other times of the year, and they want to get those out of the shelves. And so all I did was heated my cranberries on the stove. I filled the pot with water and cranberries, heated them up until the cranberries started to burst, and then I used my immersion blender to blend it down into a sauce. And then my last step here is running all of that through my food mill in order to remove any of the cranberry bits, like the solids that would have stayed after I ran the immersion blender through. And you can see this is another product that makes a gorgeous red color. It is just so beautiful, but be careful because this will definitely stain your clothing and or your aprons or whatever. So be careful with this. I was brave enough to let my little ones help out. I was just stay back and don't spill this everywhere. But whenever they see something that beautiful coming through the food mill, they always want to help out. So adding to my cranberry sauce, I like to zest one orange. That gives a wonderful flavor. If you don't have a whole orange to use to add the zest, you could always add a little bit of orange juice. You just want to add a little bit of citrus flavor to your cranberry sauce, and I'm just sort of measuring with my heart here. So I added that. I'm going to add some sugar to sweeten this just a little bit because those cranberries are tart, and then I'm going to also add a little bit of cinnamon, and you're at liberty to add as much or as little as you want. It isn't going to affect the acidity of the final product. We're going to let that simmer and thicken down a little bit, and then we're going to start filling our jars. So I am choosing to can this in pint jars. That's for a couple reasons. First, I have a ton of pint jars that I need to fill that were just sitting in storage, and I have a lot less half pints available right now. But also a full pint is a good amount to use for a meal. I primarily use this cranberry sauce as a condiment whenever I make poultry, specifically turkey or sometimes a roast chicken or something. My children just love the taste of the tart cranberry on top of the poultry. Sometimes, if I'm running low on jams and jellies, I'll even use this as a spread on some homemade bread and things like that. And believe it or not, I have some children that will eat cranberry sauce just straight off the spoon, just like you would something like applesauce. So we can't have enough of this here with 9 children to feed. They will absolutely love this. So we got our rims wiped, we got our lids on, we're going to put our rings on, and then these are going to go in the water bath canner for 15 minutes. There are lots of different ways to make cranberry sauce, and I've done videos on other ways before where I didn't strain out the solid parts of the cranberries. It's all in what you want. You could also add some pectin to this to make it like the jellied cranberry sauce that you get in the can at the store. There are so many different ways to do it, but I think this is my kids' favorite way that I do it. They like it like a fruit sauce, just like they enjoy applesauce and things. And then I'll show you, we had a little bit left over that didn't quite fill a half pint jar, and so I made some chicken this week, and the children had that with the meal. This is how I would serve something like that, and we really love that as a family. So make sure you take advantage of the sale on your cranberries right now and get them in some jars. So the next 3 canning projects that I did this week are repetitive projects that I've done many times for you guys in videos. We canned some potatoes. I did some more cranberry juice out of the very last of the frozen cranberries that I had. And I also made more tomato sauce out of 2 more bags of frozen tomatoes. And I'm going to link videos in the video description that are detailed tutorials on how to do all of these projects. But I've done those for you many times before. And that is the nature of homestead work. It is very seasonal. It is very repetitive. You tend to do the same things every year at the same time because you get things honed down into a smooth running machine, a well-oiled machine where you know the foods that your family likes, and you're going to be canning those same foods every year. And so that is just what it's like on a homestead. And part of that seasonal rhythm for us is doing a pantry challenge because we spend all year putting up all of this food, growing the food, procuring the food through other means, preserving it, and then it's in the pantry, and it's time then in the winter to get intentional about using those things. Years ago, maybe decade ago or so, I found myself having a hard time using up my canned foods. For some reason, I had this mental block. I knew the amount of work that went into preserving all of the food, and I had this scarcity mindset where if I use it all up every year, then what if I'm not able to preserve more next year? But what I found was year after year, I was letting the food sit on my pantry shelves, and sometimes the quality of it wasn't that great by the time I forced myself to open the jars a few years later. And so many years ago, I decided I was not going to do that anymore. I was going to be very intentional about using up what I preserve every year and trusting the Lord that He would find a way to help us preserve the foods again in the coming year. And so I started this cycle of doing a pantry challenge, and it saves us money every winter. In the months of January and February, we do not go to the grocery store for anything in our family now, unless it is related to a child's birthday and it is a special meal that we need to purchase those ingredients for. But otherwise, we eat solely off of the food that I was able to preserve, the meat that we were able to put into the freezer, and then we'll start, if we have to, digging into our long-term food storage to start cycling through things like bulk grains that we have stored up in our long-term pantry. There are many reasons for doing this. It's not just the money that we save, which is actually very significant. When you have a family of 11, 2 months of groceries, of not going to the grocery store, that saves you thousands of dollars. But also, what it does is it helps us prevent that food waste that I was talking about. The little things that are in the back of the pantry or that are in the bottom of the freezer that just you kind of forget about, or they maybe aren't your favorites. This is the time of year where we're going to be intentional about adding those into the meal plan. Also, it's about rotating through old things and moving them to the front of the pantry, the grains and things like that, and just finding new and creative ways to use those up. So I've been doing this now for 7 years, I think, on Instagram, and then this will be our 5th year here on YouTube. And many other content creators and people like to join us. We use the hashtag 3Rivers Challenge to just encourage one another to save money, to prevent food waste, and to come up with new and creative recipes. And that is my challenge this year, because as you can imagine, if this is something that you've been doing for a decade or so, it's no longer a challenge. I know how to stock a pantry for my family and how much I'm going to need to put in the pantry so that I don't run out of things in the months of January and February. I know what we are and aren't going to eat. So that doesn't feel like a challenge to me anymore. But what would really be a challenge this year for me is if I come up with new and exciting ways to use that food. I have noticed that over the last couple years, I've gotten into a rut because I've gotten very good at preserving the same types of foods that I know my family loves. I kind of am using the same meals over and over again. And not only is it not that exciting for my own family, but I'm sure it isn't exciting for you guys when you see the food videos that I'm putting out. So I am choosing to challenge myself in a different way this year during the 3 Rivers Challenge. My goal is to do at least 5 new recipes every week that I've never done before, and then I'm going to be bringing those to you. These are going to be recipes that I can create out of the canned, freeze-dried, frozen, and fermented foods that I have in my pantry. And my goal in sharing all this with you guys is that maybe you can get some new ideas on how to use those foods. Maybe you have some things lingering in the back of your pantry that you don't exactly love, and maybe there's some new and exciting ways that we can come up with recipes using some of those items. And so that is what I'm going to be doing this year for myself in the Pantry Challenge. And I'll be bringing you all of those meal videos, every single meal that we make throughout the challenge in January and February. And I'm really excited to do that again this year. So if you're someone like me that finds yourself tending to hoard the food that you've preserved out of a scarcity mindset, or you're someone who really needs to save some money over the winter and you'd like to challenge yourself to go to the grocery store less, or if you're someone who wants to just push your culinary skills and figure out some new ways to cook. I would love for you to join me again this year in the Three Rivers Challenge. Check out all of the resources in the video description to learn all of the ways that you can participate. But how I would like to encourage you right now to get started is to spend the rest of the month of December taking an inventory of everything that you have on your pantry shelves, everything that's in your freezer, and then you need to start making a list of absolute necessities that you know you aren't going to have enough of to get through the months of January, February, and focus on only stocking up on those items. What we don't want to do for a pantry challenge is overspend in the month of December, because that negates the purpose of saving the money in January and February. So we aren't going to go out and stockpile a bunch of food and hoard that to be able to get through the pantry challenge. But if you're someone who is really going to struggle to get through January and February because you know you don't have enough cooking fats to get through, or maybe you have children who really enjoy baked goods and you know you don't have enough wheat berries or flour, it would be very prudent to use your grocery budget in the month of December to make sure that you do have enough of those items in your pantry. And then otherwise, we're going to start getting creative and using up all of the forgotten stuff to save us money through the rest of the months. Here on our homestead, I just have a few more small projects that I need to do. They're serving a couple purposes. Not only are they stocking the pantry to make it easier in January and February, but it's also clearing the freezer for the beef that we are bringing to the butcher here in just about 2 weeks now. And 2 whole beef heifers are going to take up quite a lot of space, so I have some more work to do to get bones turned into broth and to get some meat canned up in some soups and stews and things. And so we are still canning away. I canned every day of the week last week. It felt a lot like it's August and I was doing my Every Bit Counts canning challenge. But that is just the way it is on a homestead. And so we are looking forward to, at the start of the new year, bringing you all of the Pantry Challenge videos. I hope that you guys will come along for us on the journey. My plan for the rest of the month of December is to bring you some non-food related content. There are just some things and some videos that other people had requested that I want to kind of focus on during the month of December before we go full force, full steam ahead into the Pantry Challenge season in January. So if there's any content that you would like to see me create before January, make sure you put it in the comments and I will be sure to address that either in a Q&A or in a dedicated video. All right, friends, I hope you're staying warm wherever you are. We are definitely trying here in Ohio, and I will be back next week with more for you, friends. Until then, have a blessed week. Bye.